Excuse me reminding you of last year, but 2020 was an Earth orbit cycle where everything turned a bit fucking topsy-turvy, and one of the minor switcheroos being that the verb loathe now has a net positive connotation, thanks to a metalcore band named Loathe, making one of the most awe-inspiring debuts in loud shouty guitar music that year. It was branded with one of the best album titles too, I Let It In and It Took Everything, although that's the abbreviation that misses out the subtitle, My Car, My Wife, Even Gary. It was a gorgeous album that swam its way onto the remote island of all-year highlights, but it's also one stonker of an indecisive record too, opening with a PlayStation startup type ambient interlude to screamo infused with the pungent teabag of Gent, and then eventually settling down to kiss the feet of Chino Moreno, but not for too long, lest they end up looking like a Deftones replacement act in the year where Deftones were actually releasing music again. So off they go back to heavy, stomp stomp, mosh mosh kind of metalcore. It's one hell of a fiery ruckus, so much that you can imagine there'd be some smoky, warm soot left behind, which Loathe didn't waste, and I admire that, for what is appreciating the garden that you've nurtured if you don't stop to smell the flowers? Here comes The Things They Believe, Loathe's follow-up album that is very decidedly not metalcore, but instead the band committing to instrumental, ambient soundscapes for a full LP. It's not my first exposure to ambient afterthoughts, knowing that black metal's Winter Olympics team Wolves in the Throne Room followed up the avalanching celestial Lineage with the frosty coma Celestite. I love ambient music in the right headspace, but lord did it take a while for me to appreciate what ambient track A does differently from ambient track B. When I was 16, most of the shit just sounded like the first few seconds before the Owl City dude sings, "Where was I?" But if you listen to The Things They Believe right after I Let It In, the big idea snaps into place a lot easier. The walling, conscious urgency of I Let It In is being recreated through more serene soundscapes on The Things They Believe, and if the double feature itself wasn't enough of a clue, the band literally spell it out for you in the song titles. I tried to think of which ambient artist to compare this album to, and for me the answer glowing in the sneaky corner of my peripheral vision was Tim Hicker. I didn't choose Stars of the Lid because this music actually has places to be, and I didn't choose Basinski because no property damage had to occur for this album to be made. No, I chose Hicker, mainly because both he and Loathe evoke ghostliness in the space. But by ghostliness, I don't mean to poorly evoke the half-assed image of some white translucent splodge flying through the air like what you witnessed 20 minutes ago on a different tab. No, when I say ghostliness, I'm talking about what the presence of a ghost or a ghost story does to the gut feeling when you're in that room or at the cemetery. The feeling that if you asked a question into the air, then you might just get an answer back, or a vase thrown in your face, depending on the ghost of course. Just like on I Let It In, Loathe still have a ton of ideas within even this narrower commitment. Don't Get Hurt clips to evoke the consequences of a blinding bright light, while The Year Everything and Nothing Happened coasts a lot smoother and cavier. Black Marble brings in this ticking drum rhythm, which gets drowned out by how hard the synth is weeping, although the fact that it only comes in every once in a while ends up sounding a bit fickle to moi. Either let it be there or let it go, or better yet, why let it in if it's not even going to take everything? Fighting the Good Fight rebuilds from the desolation by brightening the lights again on perhaps the album's most overtly power-instilling moment, but none of those have me as captive as the sultry expressions from saxophonist John Woff on several tracks here, giving the sense of an unknown treasure hiding in plain sight. You just have to let your mind relax to find it. It reminds me of a couple soundscapes from the Destroyer album Kaput, where the theme is living in the past, wearing nostalgia as an eye mask to keep living in a fading fantasy of cocaine in porn magazines. Except this album isn't that materialistic. I'd be surprised if porn or coke existed in this album's universe. DMT for sure though. My take on The Things They Believe overall is that it's a lovely album in the meantime, but in Loathe style it's not the most smoothly flowing work. You could hit the shuffle button and have no different an experience, and the beauty on many of the tracks are short-lived, intense musings that ask for much more time to develop, but end up rounding off at the average length of a song by Sean Kingston. It leaves you with no lingering sensation, so I'm drawn to say that The Things They Believe is most valuable in the moment that you're actually listening to it, neither before nor after. When I look back on it, I'll probably think, oh, that was nothing, but when I actually return, I'll realize the true gravity of what I'm dealing with and shit my pants, like rock climbing.